They kidnapped her, forced her to perform oral sex on them, raped her, carved the KKK in her chest, beat her to death, and left her there. One of the people took her clothes with them as like a trophy. And this happened in 1978 in a small town between Charleston, South Carolina, and Savannah called St. Helena Island. We're going to be talking about Betty Gardner. She was a 31-year-old single mother of two, and she had a father who owned land in the area that she was walking in when she was kidnapped. Now, the thing about this is, one of the four people that abducted her was an 11-year-old girl. Her name was Carol Ullman. She was a runaway, and the other girl, Cindy, she was 17 years old. She was the girlfriend of Plath. All four of these vigilantes were in this green Pontiac driving down the road when they stumbled upon Betty, who was just walking to her father's farm. Inside the car were also two dogs. Now, Betty had a long walk. They offered her a ride, and she got into the car. At first, the ride went great. They drove her to where she wanted to be dropped off. They dropped her off until John Arnold, suggested they turn around and rape, beat, and kill her. And when asked why, he said, "Because I hate niggers." This is 1978 South Carolina. Then the group decided, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Let's turn around and pick her back up and offer to take her somewhere closer to her destination. So she obliged. As Gardner sat in the car, she began to get attacked, being punched and kicked and hit with anything by Cindy Sheets, who was the girlfriend of John. Once they found a remote enough location, they brought her out of the car and forced her to perform oral sex on the two men and the woman, Cindy Sheets. After that, they began to rape her individually. Then they tied a belt that they were using to whip her with. They tied a belt around her neck and tried to strangle her. While they did that, another person was stabbing her multiple times. After they were done strangling her, they began to stomp on her neck numerous times. After that, John Plath, ordered Cindy Sheets to slice her neck with a broken Coca-Cola bottle. But she just was not dying. So then they decided, we're just going to strangle her to death, where she ultimately died. Somewhere in between there, they carved the letters KKK in her chest. After she was dead, they defecated and urinated on her corpse. After this, they went on about their merry lives. Plath and Cindy Sheets, went back to York, Pennsylvania, lived normal lives. Arnold and Ullman, the 11-year-old, stayed in Beaufort. It went unsolved for about a month until they spotted the green Pontiac, and they were able to hunt down the two, Plath and Sheets, the ones that went up to York, Pennsylvania. Get this, John Plath was hiding under the porch of his mother's house like a coward. Now, Cindy Sheets negotiated immunity as long as she told them everything that happened, and she testified against her boyfriend and the other John. That's when she led the police back to the location of the body where they left Betty. Only dental records could be used to identify her. That is how bad they did her. We can fast forward. These two men, both Johns, did end up getting convicted, and they got the death penalty 20 years later in 1998. But Ullman, the 11-year-old, was too young to charge. That she was 11 years old. Now remember, she's 11 years old. He was also charged with statutory rape of Ullman. Arnold was charged with statutory rape of Ullman, the other white perpetrator, because she was 11 years old. To this day, Carol Ullman was never brought to justice. She is still walking amongst us, influencing the youth, having an effect on people.
CIA this, CIA that. Nigga, the CIA is an autopilot.
Have y'all seen what niggas is out here doing?
If I was the head of the CIA, I wouldn't even have to send my best agents out on the field. Y'all do my job for me.
Ronald Reagan's wettest dream
could not come up with the shit that y'all niggas come up with. We got niggas tattooing Don Julio bottles to their forehead. Diamonds tattooing Hennessy bottles to the side of their face. We got a nigga out here called the DL Whisperer telling black women that all the black men that they keep around are all secretly gay. And you want me to believe that the CIA has a hand in all of this? They don't even gotta use crack no more. No hard drugs. All they gotta use
is that phone in your hand.
The Shade Room, Twitter. All of those, they baddies. They don't gotta do nothing. And we already know that niggas will do
anything
for likes, comments, shares, doing crazy shit. But views is views, right? Likes is likes. And look at me, I'm just adding to it. I'm keeping the topics alive by trying to make y'all niggas laugh. Shit, Ronald Reagan jumping for joy in hell. He just like this. He like, yes, fuck them niggas. That's so crazy.
Hey! Come on, man!
Alright, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Lakakudash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and grace and peace to you elect around the four winds, believing and pushing this truth in all sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. This is your fellow servant, Rokoya from the GMS Orlando camp, coming at you with another impromptu lesson. Tonight's lesson is going to be entitled, The Letters of Willie Lynch Were Accomplished for a Little Season. All right, and I just want to, touch on this deeply rooted sense of Stockholm syndrome that our people exemplify, especially here in America, Babylon the Great. No matter how many facts are brought out concerning the atrocities that the so-called white man has committed against our people to cut us off completely, our people still seek salvation and heaven for a nation that has put us through nothing but hell on earth, which is complete madness, but the Lord said it will be like that, for a little season until he rose up the remnant with the testimony of Yahweh Shai, all right, the true gospel and the testimony against our adversaries, as well as that testimony of vindication, all right, for the Lord's elect, But I want to start here in Lamentation, chapter 4 and verse 17. It says, As for us, our eyes have yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that cannot save us. For many generations, our people, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, have watched for a nation that couldn't save us. A nation that was designed from the foundation to be our adversary and to be the wicked, according to the Bible. Our people have sought, salvation from a nation that has actively searched out iniquities to cut us off. We get that in Psalms chapter 64 and verse 6. It says, they search out iniquities. Well, I'm going to start up. I might as well start at verse 1, right? Psalm 64 verse 1. To the chief musician, a psalm of David. Hear my voice, O power. In my prayer, preserve my life from fear of the enemy. Which is the elephant in the room, that a lot of our people refuse to address, which being the fact that we have enemies. Matter of fact, before I get that, the Lord highlighted all of our enemies in the same book of Psalms, just the 83rd chapter. All right, this is Psalms chapter 83 and verse 2. It says, For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And it goes on to list them. It says, For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom. All right, it lists Edom first, all right, which is the so-called white man. It says, and the Ishmaelites, the so-called Arabs, of Moab, the so-called Chinese, and the Hagarenes, Gabal and Ammon, the so-called Japanese, and Amalek, which is the chief house of Edom, all right, which would be your Rockefellers, your DuPonts, your Gettys, your Oppenheimers, those who control the resources, all right, those who are over in our land right now, claiming our heritage. It says, and the Philistines, which are Hamites, which are so-called Africans, with the inhabitants of Tyre, Africans as well. Ashur also is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot, Salah. All right, so the Lord highlighted, in the book of Psalms, our enemies, which have consulted together with one consent to cut us off from being a nation. And it named the nation of Edom, the so-called white man, or the so-called Caucasian race first. Because they've had the biggest hand in the destruction of you Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians. They've had the biggest hand in searching out iniquities to cut you off. Going back to Psalm 64, it says, Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity, who whet their tongue like a sword and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words. And that's one of the main tools of war that the so-called white man uses in this modern day and age. Words. To entrap you, into making a deal with him on the sly. To entrap and entice you into falling by his devices. It says that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly do they shoot at him and fear not. They encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of laying snares. It says they commune of laying snares privily. They say, who shall see them? They search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search. Both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep. All right, so the scriptures tell you, man, that they search out iniquities. All right, these are the same people, all right, who put churches on every corner of the neighborhoods that you Israelites live in to keep you spiritually and mentally docile. This is the same one who sought out the device or the stronghold of the fool system. The same one who came up with the prison, it's like your school to prison pipeline. Same one that put drugs in your community, fire water, as Gad and Reuben calls it, in your community to destroy you even further. Same one that set up these different avenues of entertainment to rot your brain and to keep you enthralled in bread and circus, so that you're completely ignorant, to what's going on globally, concerning the world affairs. Hell, even local affairs, a lot of our people are ignorant to, because they're caught up and enthralled with all this entertainment that Esau has put out. These 50-50 videos, these different debates, these 20v1s, pop the balloon, sexy red, like you seen in the video that I played before this, man. All these red pill podcasts, all these debates that's going on online about nonsense, 100 man versus one gorilla type bullshit. This is the same one who set this up to rot your brain out, man. The same one that put in place Planned Parenthood as a modern form of eugenics. The same one that put in place child support and government aid for single mothers to keep the family divided. This is the same one who has done a diligent search, all right, to cut you off. But the very same one, all right, who has done this diligent search, are the very same ones that our people are looking to for salvation, and it's complete madness. It's complete madness. And the scriptures tell you that enmity, that they've had for us, is perpetual. It's something that's never going to go away. It's something that is not going to be abolished through the belief in JC or through the belief in what we believe in, the truth. That enmity, that hatred is not going to be abolished. The Lord set that in them as a part of their makeup. The only way that's going to be abolished is by the abolishing of their whole nation, pursuant to Obadiah. Their whole nation has to be abolished for wickedness to be vanquished from the earth. This is Amos chapter 1 and verse 11. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever." All right, and a product of that is how they treated our people back in the day, and even up until now. You seen that video at the beginning of this lesson, going into the lynching of Betty Garner. All right, and how gruesome that was. And that was something that was a spectacle. That was something that they did on a frequent basis. It only stopped because Negroes became the perfect slave. There was no need to strike fear, into your heart. There was no need to try to, tear down different revolutionary groups. There's no need anymore really for him to put on the hood and the mask and to ride around to strike fear into you Negroes, Latinos, and the American Indians, because that fear is already deeply embedded. And like it says in Deuteronomy 28, he said he will put a yoke of iron on our neck until he have destroyed us. There's no need for that yoke of iron anymore. There's no need for them to ride around in hoods and cloaks to strike fear into you Negroes. It's already deeply embedded. You go to church willingly now. You seek salvation and forgiveness willingly. You destroy your own homes willingly. You destroy yourselves willingly. The KKK don't have to go out in no hoods no more. Man, you're doing his job for him. And in the same breath, in the same token, you're actively looking for salvation for him. It's complete and utter madness. Me and the brothers witnessed that this past Sunday, man. Had a Jake come up advocating for the so-called white man like they usually do, failing to realize that the so-called white man would never advocate for them and hasn't advocated for them since the foundation. Them giving you Jesus Christ was not them advocating for your salvation. That was them trying to further drive you further down the rabbit hole, because Jesus Christ is a figment of their imagination. He has nothing to do with the Bible. He doesn't fit the description of the Lord in the Bible, and his message doesn't fit the description of the Lord's message in the Bible. He's a figment of the so-called white man's imagination, in order to tear you down further. But no matter how much you tell, a 2/3 that, they're just not going to get it. Which is why a hard reset is needed. That's why the scriptures foretell of 2/3 of the nation of Israel dying grievous deaths, because they refuse to adhere to the proper message of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. They refuse to adhere. They refuse to let go of their enemy. They refuse to stop trimming their ways to seek love. They refuse. So the Lord is just going to have to give them a hard reset. But for the remnant, this is the case. Let's get this. This is Isaiah. Give me a second. My phone is loading. This is Isaiah chapter 10 and verse 20. And it shall come to pass in that day that the remnant of Israel, and such as are escaped of the house of Jacob, shall no more again stay upon him that smote them, but shall stay upon the Lord, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, the Holy One of Israel, in truth. All right. The remnant shall return, even the remnant of Jacob, unto the mighty power. And that's exactly what's happening here in these latter days. All right, the Lord has raised up the remnant, all right, and given them the spirit to not stay upon our oppressor, but to rather lean on the Lord, our power. To not trust in the same devices that have been tearing us down for generations, but rather to trust, all right, in the device that the Lord set up for us from the foundation to prosper, which is the truth. The only cure for Stockholm Syndrome is death. There is no rehabilitating somebody that has that mindset. You have to give them a hard reset, which is what the Lord is coming to do. Only through the Lord's Spirit are we able to come out of that mindset, and fortify ourselves under the banner of Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai. Only through the Spirit of the Lord. Otherwise, we would have been in the same case. But these tendencies are the very same tendencies that the so-called, if you go and read the Willie Lynch letter, were the same tendencies that the so-called white man tried to breed within our people. And he successfully did it. The Lord allowed him to be successful in that endeavor for a little time and season, until he rose up that remnant who would no longer stay upon those that smoked them, but stay upon the Lord. And as we stay upon the Lord, our power, the Lord is starting to turn things right side up. He's starting to vindicate us in the face of our enemies. He's starting to cast down our enemy's greatest stronghold. And with that being said, that's all I had, Lord. When it's edifying that you elect, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakakodash. I want to give the honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in grace and peace to elect around the four winds, believing and pushing this truth in all sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. Shalom. Stay up.